Hey everyone, today on Gadget Guys, we're going to have some fun with Drobos. And by fun, I mean dealing with the Drobos when they don't like to recognize drives or they're just being a bit funky. We're also going to briefly cover how to migrate from some of the older Drobo-FS type Drobos to the newer B810N. These ones don't have a direct migration path, so we're going to show you some ways to do that. Hi, there's two topics I'm going to try and cover here today with you, and they're both somewhat related, but can happen independently. The first one is how to migrate from a Drobo-FS or Drobo-5N to a Drobo B810N. So in this case, I've gotten tired of putting in larger and larger hard drives into my Drobo and decided that I needed one with more drive base, so that I could just use the existing hard drives I already have that I've been swapping out. Now, unfortunately, there's no way to directly swap between the Drobo-FS and the Drobo B810N. It has a different operating system on it, different file system, and you can't just take your drive pack and move it from one to the other. So please don't do that. It will start to wipe all of the data on your drives. It'll just assume it's new drives and start to use them. So unfortunately, what that means is you need to manually copy everything over. There's no utilities provided by Drobo for this. There's no apps to do direct transfers. So that also means you're going to need a computer in the middle. The good advantage to that is you could just use any type of file copy program. You can do it in Windows, you could do it on a Mac, you can do it with whatever you prefer. I personally have used rsync in the past, and if that's something that interests you, I highly recommend having a read about how to do that. It's a command line based utility, but it's very easy to use, and it is very well documented and covered elsewhere, so it's not something I'm going to cover today. But ultimately, you will need to create new volumes on the new Drobo, and then from there manually copy it over. And it is a bit of a lengthy process to copy it, especially if you have a lot of data. It took me a couple days to go through it all. So that being said, what I ultimately ended up doing, and this is how I got into this pickle and how I've decided to create a video to help give some troubleshooting steps for this, is that I picked up two new hard drives for my my larger Drobo, the 8 drive one, and we can see that here. No, it'd help if I went to the right screen. It is, there we go. So you see what ended up happening is I bought the two 8 terabyte drives and I put them into the Drobo, and then from there I started to copy data over from my old one to the new one. And as I was freeing up space on the old one, I was able to remove a hard drive. So that's the 6 terabyte one that's there. You'll see a 2 terabyte one as well. That's just a free one I had kicking around that I threw in. Now, unfortunately, what happened via a product of me removing this 6 terabyte drive here from the 5 or the Drobo-FS and putting it into the 8-bay one is that I basically pulled out the drive, and this is kind of where my troubles started about it not rebuilding itself. So I've gone through a bunch of different steps to help try and troubleshoot this and kind of kick it into the rebuild process. One of the things I've learned through my investigation is that in a lot of cases, this is a very common issue where you'll try to, they call it downsizing your Drobo. So you've got lots of extra space on it, and I can show you that here. And ultimately, your goal is to take out hard drives that you're no longer needing and put them elsewhere. So in this case, what had happened is I also had the 6 terabyte hard drive in this Drobo, and I removed it to put it in the other one so that I had more space while copying. And for whatever reason, the Drobo got stuck and didn't downsize and rebuild so that it could properly protect the data. So right now you'll see I'm getting errors here, and that's saying that I'm not protected against drive failure. And it's not rebuilding based upon the removed drive, even though there's way more than enough space here. So there's a bunch of different ways you can go through and correct this. Some of them work with limited success. As you'll see, I'm currently in the phase where I've gone through a bunch of different activities, and none of them have correctly resolved it yet. So I'll be adding more to the end of this video once I've corrected it. But I wanted to show you in the current stage what I've tried and what it looks like. So you'll see originally the second bay there, where it's right now saying 500 gigs, was empty. And if I were to remove that hard drive right now, it would continue to stay red and just say add a hard drive. So in this case, even by adding a hard drive, it's still telling me it doesn't like that drive spot. So a couple different ways that have been successful in resolving this in the past is to, as I said, put in a hard drive where it's asking for it, and then it'll rebuild around that. Another thing that I've seen that's worked is to turn on the or change the number of failure drives, or the data, I guess, disk redundancy as they call it. So that's essentially how many drives can fail before you lose your data. So the standard is 1. You can go to 2 if you want, and sometimes that switch between it is enough to cause the re-replication and the condensing and all of the background processes to run. So that's something that you can enable from the settings here under general. And you'll see here that there's this dual disk redundancy. So sometimes enabling that causes it to rebuild and everything works just fine. So that's one of the ways to fix it. The other way is to put in a drive that it's asking for, or try removing it, stuff like that. Keeping in mind that if you are going to add or remove drives, don't ever do that if it's blinking yellow green. That means it's doing something, it's rebuilding. Chances are that's a good sign. If your drive lights are blinking yellow green, it's working in the background, and you're going to see it either come back in a fashion of green, or something's going to be different. So it's working. Don't touch it when it's doing that. But you'll see here when it's purely green and there's nothing, no indication that it's doing anything, it's kind of stuck. So you see here that those two methods of correcting it haven't really worked for me. I've tried putting in a couple different hard drives into the spot that's saying add hard drives, and they always show up as red. Nothing ever really rebuilds, even though I've successfully been able to set it to 2 hard drive redundancy versus 1, and it goes through that process and nothing happens. One of the other things I'll mention, just as a little tip, if you're removing or moving or changing a lot of data on the Drobo in a period of time, it won't perform its maintenance activities or its condensation activities, or however you want to call it, or it won't rebuild from a failed drive, because its priority is really about the data delivery, and so those maintenance activities don't often happen. Now that being said, I've heard of people pulling out a drive and it's sitting it's stuck like me right now, and then magically 5 days later it starts rebuilding. So there is some funkiness that happens around there, and often people try to expedite this process because you certainly don't want to wait some unknown number of days for it to perform its background tasks. But essentially the point there that I was trying to make is that it is possible that if you're reading a lot of data from the drive or removing or changing a lot of data, it's not going to perform those maintenance activities. So in that case, I certainly recommend that you would stop deleting, copying, removing data and give it some time if you have the time to let it do it. Otherwise, certainly try the other 2 options that I've mentioned to kind of get stuck out of this. And then ultimately, I'm still stuck in this position. I have waited the few days, and I have gone through all the other troubleshooting activities that I have found. So for me, it's going to be a contact to support to see what they can do to help give me some more options to fix this. There are a few others. I'm just leery to try them because it involves rearranging drives and stuff like that, and I want to make sure I'm not going to lose data. So I will be coming back before I post this video. I'll certainly have more information about everything else I've tried. I wanted to record it in this state so that you could see at least how far I've gotten so far and what it looks like. And then ultimately I'll be back once I've found a way to resolve this. There is one way that I can resolve this. I'm trying not to have to go down that road, but it ultimately will be to copy everything off of the Drobo to my new one and completely reformat and start this one from scratch. I am toying with the idea because it, with all the different firmware upgrades and all the software changes, you never know what's happening behind the scenes in the file system and the way the data is stored. So it may be a valuable task to perform anyways, but I don't really want to go through that activity because it's a lot more data to copy, and I ideally would like to find a solution to fix this rather than having to completely format it and start over. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'll be back soon. Well, for you it'll be right away, but once I've figured out some more information on how to resolve this, I'll add that onto this. All right, well, it's been a few days, and a bunch of troubleshooting went on behind the scenes. Essentially, I went through all of the steps that we talked about earlier. Second time, just trying to see if I could get it to do its thing. Unfortunately, I was unable to have anything that successfully caused the Drobo to kind of figure out that all the data had been removed from it, and it had a lot more free space than it thought. So that kind of left me with the only option of formatting it, or basically taking everything else remaining on it off and doing a format or a restore essentially on the Drobo. I still have Drobo Care on both of my Drobos, so I was able to reach out to them to see if there were any alternatives. One of the learning pieces here, I'd say, is that because it's a closed proprietary system, there's a lot that you can't figure out about what's going on your own, and sometimes you do have to go to Drobo if you are looking for a fix that doesn't involve a complete refresh. Unfortunately, in this case, my Drobo still thought it was full, even though it was reporting that it wasn't. So something got a little messed up there, and Drobo recommended that I just refresh the Drobo. So you'll see here that actually it's got a different name to it now. I finally renamed it from Drobo-FS. But that's essentially the same Drobo. What I had to do is I had to finish clearing everything off of it. And from there, I then was able to refresh it. So that is one of the downfalls of Drobo. Luckily, they have really good tech support, provided you have warranty or Drobo Care. And they'll usually figure this stuff out for you. And then if all else fails, the easy fallback, easy, and I'm doing air quotes here that you can't see, but ultimately the easy fallback is to take all your data off of it and refresh it. So unfortunately, that wasn't a simple solution, or I guess it was simple, just time consuming. But at least this video will cover a few different steps you could try in order to try and get it to fix itself. Unfortunately, none of those work for me, but hopefully they will work for you. The other piece is this will also help you with the migration from a Drobo-FS to a newer B810N, or even the newer network-based Drobos. They have different file systems, so you can't do it directly. So hopefully that'll give you some ideas of how you're going to copy between the two. So that's it for today. I welcome you to check out our other videos as we post them. There will be one that we'll be posting in the near future about how the process I went through to copy data between the two. I used a couple different tools to make sure that I was effectively copying, as well as making sure that it was verified and that all the data did copy over properly. I'll get into that in another topic or another video, and hopefully that'll help you if you choose to go through that migration. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully these tips will help you out in the future. Thanks.